Underwater Kinetics Super QXL Light. The flashlight that was made infamous by the Larry Vickers build. That weird chunk of light bolted to the underside of a handguard during Operation Desert Storm, or even earlier, Acid Gambit, and the invasion of Panama. That's right, today on the Gear.Locker, I'm going to show you how to build one of these. Now, this is neither an easy or inexpensive task. I try to use all real parts on as many things that I do, and this one is no exception. But with that being said, you can get reproductions made by TC Tactical Casting. He's in Europe, so for our US guys right now at the time of filming, it might be a little tricky, but I'm gonna show you how to do one anyway. Building it from all real parts that you can source on eBay or other channels. So before we get into the how-to, let me walk you through what you're gonna need. Obviously, for a build like this, you're going to need a QXL light. This one is the Underwater Kinetics Super QXL. I picked up a pair of these for $100 total on eBay, so about 50 bucks each, but your mileage is gonna vary on that price. Now, this was originally a bright color. I painted it black. Just on the ends, I did go a little overboard and painted more than just that, but on the back side here, where it will be poking out, as well as on the front, I was very sure not to paint over the lens, and I still kept a bit of the clear on the outside, but I have a cover, so that just came with mine. If you wanted to paint the whole thing, you totally could. This is gonna be part number one, the most challenging to find. Second, you're gonna need a switch. Now, the switches, luckily, are still kind of around, but not in just standalone sales. You're gonna need to find one and harvest it from what I found to be the most common source, Sea-Doo ignition switches. Sea-Doo is an aquatics boat kind of brand, and their ignition switches do come relatively inexpensive. At the time of filming, like 20 bucks on eBay at most. Is what I would pay for them. I found mine for less than 12 each. And they have these switches that you not only get the vintage wiring, but you get two of them. You get the black one, which is the one you're gonna wanna use, but if you're doing multiple builds or wanna just have some extras on hand, the white ones, or you'll even find orange ones sometimes, are also plenty fine. They're the exact same thing, just a different color. Well, I shouldn't say exact same thing. This one's got 2 wires sticking out of it, this one's got 3, but that doesn't affect functionality. After you've got your switch, you're going to need some hose tubing. Do it however you want. You'll see when I show you guys how to do mine. The hose that I picked is very, very tight on it, but keeps everything secure. So I'm not gonna complain there really, but just do your own measurements and figure out what kind of inner tubing you wanna get. Then you're going to need to get some hose clamps. I painted these black, but these are stainless steel, and we'll get into how to modify these later. But again, stainless steel hose clamps, very easy to find. And last, you're going to need some nuts and bolts. These are 1/4 inch bolts that are about a 1/2 inch long. Get 2 of these with some nuts and you're good to go. As you can see, I painted these black as well. Now let's get to the tools. There's gonna be a good number of tools that you're gonna need, so let's talk through it. Obviously, you're gonna need a soldering iron to redo the wiring. Also in the electronics department, you're gonna need some heat shrink. And electrical tape can be helpful too, but it's not necessary if you're good with using this stuff. I recommend having a pair of pliers for sure, but also wire strippers. You will need a drill, and to get through the stainless steel, I had to go out and buy a cobalt bit, and all you're gonna need to do is drill a 1/4 inch hole for the bolt to go through. So it's not that hard to find one, but definitely get something that'll go through stainless steel. I also have a couple clamps just to hold everything down while I'm working on it, and a pair of scissors. So without further ado, let's just jump right into this thing. So as I mentioned, first things first, I painted all of these, but yeah, once you've got that all set, you're gonna wanna disassemble your QXL light. You can leave the whole head part together, but inside you're gonna notice 2 things. You're going to see a long metal bar there, as well as your spring in the back. Those need to be removed. You're gonna wanna pull everything out, so you can kind of just force the bottom portion out. There you go. You have your long metal strip here that you're gonna need to solder to, which is kind of tough, I'll be honest. Then I'm gonna use a screwdriver, see if I can get that spring out, because it is being, there we go. You've got your rear spring right there. Now, these do take C batteries, so you can use C batteries, no problem with this modification. You can also find rechargeable ones too. I found that those work fine as well. But now that you've got this apart, let's work on this first, because there's only one main thing that you're gonna have to do to this body to get it ready to go. And that's drill a hole. Once again, kind of depending on whatever you wanna do, how big you wanna go. You don't wanna jeopardize the structural integrity of this, so it's really your choice. Whatever you can do to fit 2 of the wires through. I found that maybe going for like a 1/4 inch is gonna be more than fine. Now, where you're gonna place this is gonna be on the opposite side from where this metal tab was, on the top of it, essentially, if you're looking at it down the tube, and a little bit in from that angled bevel at the end. It really doesn't matter too much as long as it's no more than, I'd say maybe 1/2 inch in from the flat part, only because you do wanna make sure all the wires can go up through there and not get like woven throughout all the internals. So once again, if I'm taking a look at this, I'm gonna get that hole set. There we go. And I am ready to go on that front. Let me clean up this hole a bit. Perfect. So right here, got my hole, ready to go. I'm gonna be able to fit 2 wires through there, and yeah, that's all you really need to do with this body piece. So you can put this to the side just for now. So now let's prep the wiring assembly. The way that I find it easiest to do is to cut off at the very base of the big connector. So that you can kind of put to the side, I don't know, use it for some weird project. But now you're just gonna pull off this outer tubing. And luckily, this comes off really easily. You could take this and you do not need this anymore, so toss it. And here you go. Now you got your 2 connectors. Luckily, the black one already has 2 wires attached to it. This piece right here, the wire that connects the 2 pressure switches, you don't need it at all. So you can cut right off at the base. If you want to seal that up with, I don't know, some kind of heat shrink or super glue or whatever you want to do, you totally can. I found that leaving it empty and just cutting the wire out is no issue. So I'm gonna cut right there at that base for just that 1 wire that connects the 2. Bam, there you go. Now this white one is free of all of its pain. You could toss this to the side because you do not need this one either. Unless, of course, you're doing other projects. So what you're left with is your pressure button, your little pendant switch, your 2 wires, and they are very long. You do not need them to be this long. So here's where it gets interesting. You don't know exactly how long your wires are gonna need to be unless you put it together and pre-assemble it, which I don't like doing that, so I'm totally okay just wiring 2 separate things. Of course, wiring the base of these wires to my metal parts that are gonna connect with the batteries, and taking this one and wiring it to the wires that stick out. That way I can adjust it to the exact length that I want for my light setup. So with that, I am gonna cut off this piece right here. I'm gonna give it a little bit of extra room. It's totally okay to have a lot of room, but if I'm taking a look at my other example, I wanted to make sure that the soldered part together was in between the 2 hose clamps. So if I'm kind of matching that up, I would personally say you want to get maybe 2 inches of that wire ready to go. So give it a little extra so you can wrap them together and solder. So maybe, I don't know, 2.5. Trim that, and then there you go. Got this part all set. I'm going to strip these wires, not too much, maybe 1/4 inch, at most 1/2 inch if you really want to. It's up to you. Look up how to solder. I'm not a tutorial on how to do that, but yeah, just get these wires stripped and prepped. There we go, and that's 2. So these are ready to go. One thing that you can do is use a bit of heat shrink to get these together, which it'll make it a cleaner look, but we'll do that once we start heat shrinking everything. This is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated in that you kind of have to pre-prep your stuff before you do any soldering. So I'm just gonna triple check the fitment. I have my wire hole and I have my 2 wires. Can I pass these wires through that hole comfortably and, you know, without any issue? If we're going for that 1/4 inch, it is no problem. Goes all the way through, right out. Very little resistance. It will kind of hold it, which is good. I don't want too much room. So now that I've got this, I can kind of get ready to just solder. You know, I'm gonna prep the 2 ends of these wires and I'll talk to you about soldering in a second. Let me get these ones set. Ready to go. Let's take this thing to the soldering iron. Okay, so soldering iron is heating up. If not, it is already heated up. It's at 470 degrees Celsius. Geez, that's hot. But just to show you what I prepped. So I prepped this wire to be a little bit longer in the exposed area, so I can wrap it around this. I found it doesn't really stick well, the solder, to this plate, so I cut a little notch in it. If you have tin snips or something else like that, you can always do that. It doesn't need to be done. You will have to solder and it will kind of be annoying sometimes, but this is what I found to be kind of helpful. So I'm doing the purple wire on here. Your wire color might vary. All you're doing is connecting a circuit, so it's not really like that big of a deal which wire goes where. But yeah, let's connect this purple one here. So how I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna kind of wrap it around just to get a little bit more of a secure connection and bring that wiring over. So it kind of has something to grab onto. The other thing I prepped was getting some heat shrink there just to wrap it over and finalize it. So right here, kind of annoying to do. So here, I'm just gonna solder. Don't judge my soldering skills. I'm a very big amateur at it, but if I can get these lights to work, so can you. Let's flip to the underside a little bit. Can't really see what I'm doing here, I'm sorry. So we're gonna let that dry for a second. Well, not dry, but re-solidify as I almost lose it and burn myself. That'd been fun. So yeah, so there we go. So that one's pretty good. That one's ready to go. That's definitely not coming off. I'm gonna flatten that out. Ooh, a little warm. And push the heat shrink over it. So I wanna make sure I can get this heat shrink all the way over, just to protect all of it, of course, but also to make sure there's no kind of extra current going where there shouldn't be. We don't want any connections when we don't want the connections. Perfect. Okay, so then I'm gonna bend it back up, over it. Perfect. Okay, good. Now I got this. Let's shrink this down. Okay, bam, we are good to go. That is attached, and that's not coming off at all. So now the other one's a little bit easier. Here, you're just going to attach, wrap the wire around and solder, probably around the second ring, just so that everything connects and doesn't kind of crunch it down. You will have some wiggle room in the spring, but yeah, if you just wrap this around once or twice, and then put some solder over it, and of course in it to connect it, you'll be good to go. So let's tackle that. This one's also gonna be a little tough to show. So I'm gonna bring this around, give it a good old wrap and twisty tie. Let's see, you can, good thing about it being a spiral is that you can do it higher up where you have more room, and then slide it down. Only other thing with this is you're gonna want this to sit upwards, because if you notice, when you have the wire poking out, it will be going upwards. So just make sure however you solder this on and kind of finalize it, it's not like at a weird angle where it's gonna get crunched or pinched, because then odds are your wiring is gonna break. So let's tackle that now though. So I'm gonna get some solder on there just to solidify it all up. Cool. All right, you can always do a little bit more, but yeah, let me get some more on this side. So that's pretty good, and for now, I'm gonna turn the soldering iron off. Mine reheats pretty quickly, so if you wanna keep yours running, go for it, but when I'm messing around, I wanna try to minimize the burn. So now comes the tricky part. Now we have to put this all back in. And you don't wanna tug on the wires too much. You don't wanna like shove things in there, because you're gonna want it to be, you know, functional. You don't wanna break all the work you just did. So I'm going to pull the purple wire back that I have on the longer strip, and I'm gonna line that up with the slot that's already in the flashlight. So it's gonna be tough to see, but if you know what I'm doing, then you get it. Pull this wiring back, and then this has to go back. Pull the wiring, bam. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's in there, nice and solid. Now the green one is gonna be weird because this is already bending, just because it has to go in like this. So I'm gonna pull it back kind of at an angle. I'm not gonna try to jam it in the whole way flat, but slightly at an angle, and push it back at the same time. Okay, I did it. So I put it all the way back down in there. You probably can't see it well, but just trust it is in there in the proper orientation. Now we've got our two wires sticking out. Now comes an interesting thing, because you wanna make sure this lines up exactly where you want it. If you wanna do the Paul House style thing, where it's in between the two hose clamps, you can shorten the wires and put them right here. But typically you want them to rest, if you wanna do just the standard average build, up here, with about half of your button sticking off. That's at least what I found. You can do a little bit more. But yeah, once you get this locked in, you wanna figure out where you want your wires to be. So I'm gonna want mine to kind of be around there, maybe a little more taut. I have some wiggle room, so I'm gonna cut and strip them to the desired length. Good news is once you make your cut, you have a ton of extra wires. So if you have to do a couple of them just to extend it to where you want, you also have that ability. Okay, in a good spot now. So what you're gonna wanna do is put a couple of heat shrink tubes on them so that you can wrap these fully. You can go pretty long, like I know I'm gonna go pretty long with these, just so I have a lot of coverage. Also just helps smooth out the look. You know, if you got one big blob sticking out in the middle of your flashlight, kind of doesn't look the cleanest. Okay, cool, gonna heat this up now. And now let's solder each of these. However you wanna do these, you can. If you do the twist and wrap method, if you just kind of shove them together, whatever your experience level is. So I'm gonna do one at a time, get the solder going, and yeah. Here we go. And with that said, you are done with your soldering job. You can wrap these wires up, make them look pretty, and you are good to go on this flashlight. All right, so not a hard process, but definitely something you gotta try a couple times. As you can tell, I did have to rewire it a couple of times, only because I kept running into some weird shorting issues, so just making sure there's no wires in contact with another one. Just maybe take a second look before you put it all together and try it out. But anyway, as you can tell, it's working beautifully, so let's get this thing all dolled up. And the first thing you're gonna need is that bike inner tube. Now with this, I tend to try to keep it not terribly long, but still long enough to cover everything you want it to cover. So the tubing I got, that's struggle number 2. It's not very wide in that it will cover it, but it is very tight. So I do have to use some silicone oil or some kind of lubricant just to get this thing to fit on in general. So if I kind of lay it out to see where I want it to be, it's gonna depend on the type of build you wanna do, but I know mine is gonna go to about here. You can always adjust it, give or take, give it some extra room, give it a little less. You can always trim it off at the end as well. Let's get a nice and clean cut here. Beautiful. Let's get this on. I might have to time lapse this with how challenging it's gonna be. It's very annoying. But all right, I'm gonna give it a little bit of a spray inside with silicone oil, inside the tubing that is. Whoops, of course, it gets all over my fingers. It's gonna be nice and tough to do. And the best method I found to do this, if you get a really tight tube, you're gonna have to probably do this, if not figure something else out. Or if you have a loose tube, then, you know, that's on you. But stretch it out a bit. See if I can wrap this thing on. Again, the method that I like to do is to kind of twist it on. You gotta just make sure your wires don't get all twisted and everything. But once you're on there with the silicone oil, it is much easier to do. So I'm gonna wrap this on, and actually this is going way faster than it was when I did my first one. Oh, look at that, actuating the button. And once you start getting to some of like the ending portion where you're gonna have to slip it over here, that's not really gonna work out the best with just twisting it on. You can get it close, which is good, but yeah, you might want to pull it over so you don't twist any wires or accidentally yank anything. Man, that silicone oil is like bubbling up. Nope, that's a rip in it. Well, round two. Let's pull this one off. So I was telling my friend the process. I said I could probably make money on another app doing this kind of thing. All right, a little bit. Left overhang in there. I'm not gonna make the jokes I wanna make. All right, we're close, we're close. So I'm probably gonna come back to this. I'm not gonna make you watch this whole thing, but yeah, let me go to another fun part. Okay. Cobalt bit installed. You're gonna go really slow with this because we're gonna cut some notches into these. Not notches, but we're gonna drill some holes, I should say. As you can see, I already marked the X spot where it's gonna be. It's roughly like ½ an inch from the top of this if you want this to sit pretty flush on the side. For example, like this, you could see it's pretty flush, maybe angled a little bit downward, so it's up to you wherever you wanna place this, but I like to have that on the side. So if you wanna do that, follow that kind of ½ inch rule. Now the thing is, when we're using a bit on this kind of material, you're gonna wanna clamp everything down to make sure nothing shifts, nothing moves, because if you get hurt, it's not gonna be pretty. Let's go right onto there. There we go, this one's all set. Beautiful hole drilled right through. Same thing on number 2, and then you are ready to mount this thing pretty much. All right, this one's all set too. Let's mount this thing. Now, again, you're gonna need those screws. You're gonna pop those from the bottom, right up and through. You might need to kind of screw it in depending on how tight you made your tolerances and everything. But once you have one and then the other, you are ready to mount. Now, where you wanna mount this is technically up to you, but typically I notice them to be one closer to the front here, one a little further back, about 1 3/4 inches apart. So I'm gonna put this on the top and I'm gonna have this push button angled slightly. And I'm gonna bring this tie around. Now, here's the interesting part. Oh man, I left the tool over there, didn't I? Now, the annoying part to this is, depending on the size you buy, you might have a ton of overhang. I know I definitely will. This is barely over 1 inch, 1.5 inches. So I did buy ones that are a little too large, but hey, always better to have more than not enough. So before we get to screwing anything in, I'm gonna trim a lot of the excess off. And of course, I'll have to do that as we go along, especially because this is gonna be wrapped really tight. So let's trim maybe 2-3 inches off. And I know will have some more to play with. All right, tin snips coming in clutch. Let's do that now. Yes, okay. Let's see, I'm gonna position this. All right, I am pretty close here, getting to the point where my excess is intruding, but otherwise, that's pretty good. So I've always found that you can have a little bit of excess and just trim it off. Like in this one, you can kind of tuck it under, which is great. This one, obviously I cut it too short on mine. But no sweat, this is for a friend, so I'm gonna make sure I do it right. Now that I've got it fully adjusted, I'll trim off maybe only a tiny bit, maybe 1 or 2 little slits. Yeah, there you go. That should work much better. Let's do the other one now. Same idea. And again, this one you're gonna wanna position roughly 1 3/4 inches away, wherever it's gonna fit under the handguard that you're using. That's really what's most important. And there you have it. That was a long process and definitely not one that was without its struggles, but this thing is working beautifully, just like the other one. This is how you convert an Underwater Kinetics Super QXL light. Before you go, a couple notes I want to make. Number one, this is not an easy process, and I couldn't have done it without the understanding of how to do it in basic general terms from TC Tactical Casting. So huge props for him for pioneering this repro market. I'm not trying to compete with him or anything, not trying to make repros and sell them out from under him, but you know, he showed everyone how to do it and I kind of just followed his instructions. The other thing is a huge shout out to all of my Patreon subscribers and YouTube members. You guys are the reason I can do this kind of video where I can just have fun and do what I want to do. It's all because of you guys. So thank you so much again. I appreciate all your support. I appreciate you sticking to the end of this video. This is the Gear Locker. See you guys in the next one.